In Luke, the 7th chapter, 11 through 15. Then I'm going to do something that I felt compelled to do. I tried to not do it, but whether it was me or just my own thinking or whatever, but I'm going to do something right after the message here, before our children come out. And then later we're going to have a presentation of gifts and a giving of flowers. And it came to pass the day after, he had just talked to a centurion, healed. There's a healing going on and what have you. I won't go through and make this long, but I want you to know Jesus had just healed a centurion's servant. And then the next day it came to pass that he went into a city called Nain. And many of his disciples went with him, and much people. He had a large multitude following. Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And much people of the city was with her. I want us to get the picture. Then the next verse is what we're going to take a little look at. Jesus is coming into a little village, a little small town named Nain. He's heading into the city. Coming out of the city, there's a funeral procession. An individual is being carried in a bier or a coffin by those carrying him. A mother is alongside the coffin, and she's mourning. She's in tremendous sadness and distress. She's already lost her husband. That's been a tremendous blow, a tremendous, painful, distressful day that he passed away. And now her only son is being carried to the cemetery. He's been pronounced dead. He's been laid in a coffin. All hope is gone. All she has is despair, pain, and suffering. This son that she loves, this son that was her life, is now gone. She can't think of a future. She can't think of the tomorrow without her son. Her husband's death was a tremendous tragedy, and now her son, a mother that has lost hope, a mother headed toward the cemetery instead of toward the shopping center, a mother instead of heading home to prepare meals and to do the home making part of a mother, she's headed towards a cemetery. No one to take care of now. No one to sit at her table. No one to communicate with her. No one to say with an embrace and with a voice of gratitude, Mom, I love you. I appreciate you. All is gone. Disparity has entered. Tragic, painful. The day is not going good. It's a day of mourning. It's a day headed in the wrong direction. But she bears up under it. She follows close to her son and the casket he's laying in, and the folks that are with her. At the same time that she is leaving this city of Nain in this terrible procession, in this painful travel that she's traveling, there is another group of folks that are headed in the opposite direction. They're headed into the city. They're headed into the place where that they have planned to go to. Jesus is head of this group. Many are following him. And these two, one going toward the cemetery, one group of people headed into the city, converge on each other. They're passing each other. Jesus is passing that way. Nothing greater can be in one's life than Jesus passing our way. Jesus looks at the situation, and here's what the Word of God says. And when the Lord saw her, he understood the situation, but he looked at her. He looked not just into her physical pain and suffering, but he looked into her heart. When Jesus saw her, that lets me know that Jesus is looking at us, folks. He sees us. He sees our pain. He sees our hopelessness. He sees our tragedies of life. He sees the issues and the problematic situations that are unbearable at times. He sees those, but he goes a step further. He looks into the heart of this woman, this mother, this wife that has lost everything, and he had compassion on her. He saw a heart broken. He saw a heart filled with hopeless aspirations going down the drain that she had planned for her son. And he had compassion. You think Jesus doesn't have compassion on mothers? Oh, yes, he does. He saw this mother. Bible doesn't tell us what her background was. It doesn't tell us other than her tragedies. The Bible doesn't tell us what kind of homemaker or what kind of career she had, where she lived. All it told us was she was in despair, and Jesus looked into her despair, and he had compassion. He cares about mothers. He loves mothers. Mothers are special to Jesus. The way he treated his own earthly mother shows us without doubt how much he cared for his own mother. And here we find a mother, and he looks at her after having compassion, and he says something that doesn't make sense. He said, "Don't cry, weep not. Don't cry." But you don't understand. Yeah, I do understand. Don't cry. I'm here for you. Let me handle this situation. How many times we try to handle our own situations, and Jesus says, "Let me handle this for you." There's nothing you can do about it. It's impossible for you to bring your son back. It's impossible for anyone to do that other than me, because I'm the resurrection. Don't cry. This must have sounded astonishing and something that just didn't make sense to either her crowd or the crowd following him when Jesus blurted these words out. I don't know how all he said it. He might have said, "Mother, I feel for you. I have compassion for you. I care for you. I know the pain you're going through. I feel it. And it's moved me with compassion. If you will let me handle this, I'll take care of this for you." And he came and he touched the bier or the coffin. And they that bare him, because this was not kosher, this was not legal. to touch a dead person's coffin. And they that bare him stood still. They didn't know what else to do. A man comes up, someone coming, and says to a mother, don't cry. Don't weep. I know, folks, dry your tears, he said. And he went over and done that which you don't do. He touched a dead person's coffin. And he said something. Young man, I say unto thee, arise.
Amen.
You think that he can't do that even while we're living, touch our sons and daughters from where they are and bring them to life?
Yes.
When he says, weep not. Everybody stood still. And Jesus spoke the words. He didn't say it to everybody or everybody would have rose from the grave. He said it only to this young man. He said, young man, arise. Can you imagine someone coming by and telling a mother, first of all, don't weep. You don't understand. I'm on the way to the cemetery. Don't weep. You don't understand. I'm getting ready to bury my son. I will never see him again. You don't understand. You're saying words that are hopeless. You don't understand the tragedy and feelings I'm going through and the loss I have. And Jesus was saying, yes, I understand. Just stand still and listen to me. Quit. Dry your tears up. Young man, he said, arise. I want you to get up out of that coffin. Remember, they're not in the hospital. They're not in the doctor's office. They're not in the coroner's office. They're on the way to the cemetery. The grave has probably already been dug, and they're going there to lay him in the grave. He's dead. He's been pronounced dead. There is no life in him. But Jesus, the life of mankind, the resurrection of mankind, is coming by that day. And he touches the bier and he says to the young man, the dead young man, arise. I want you to get up. Now when Jesus speaks, something happens. The scripture said, and he that was dead, not he that was asleep, or he that was in a coma, but he that was dead. Set up. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the heart of this mother? Can you imagine the feeling of this mother? The joy of this mother? The comfort of this mother? When our children are delivered, even though they may be alive in body, when they are delivered, when the Lord reaches down and changes their life, my mothers rejoice. Even those mothers that can't jump very high, jump as high as they can. Hands are raised. Why? Because the Lord has come by. Let me take care of this for you. And the young man sat up. And he done another thing. He began to speak. And Jesus delivered him to his mother. I like that. Jesus has delivered him from death, and now he delivers him to his mother. Jesus can deliver our families from the very approach of death, from the very circumstances of death. Jesus can deliver our children and say to us, behold thy child. I have delivered them. Arise. And he delivered him to his mother. Let me read the 16th verse. And there came a fear on all, and they glorified God, saying that a great prophet is risen among us, and that God has visited his people. He still wants to visit you and I today. And he is everything that we need, because he is our resurrection. He loves mothers. He had compassion on this mother, and he loves this mother. I'm going to do something that may be a little bit selfish to me, but I want to share this because I want to say something, because there is a message in what I'm going to say, and then I want Brother Tony, after this, you to bring the youth out here. I'm going to talk about my mother. I have the privilege of doing that, and I also have the honor of doing that. So I'm going to talk about my mom. I never learned to really appreciate her until after she passed on. And that wasn't too long ago. In fact, it was this month, 2 years ago. And I had the honor of doing the service for her along with my other siblings. Dan was there, I remember that. And I thought about it later, how much I should have done and said more for my mom. But I'll have to wait till I get to heaven now. But I want to share some thoughts. The eulogy that I wrote out, this is the same eulogy that I wrote out for my mom during the funeral that we had. And some of this will relate to you and some of it won't. But I just want her to know how much she is appreciated. The continuity of mom, that's what I titled it. The continuity of my mom. In order to understand the continuity of my mom's life, I must reveal the uncertainties of her life. Those things that were always changing. For instance, Mom lived at several addresses, not 3 or 4, but dozens. Dad had a moving DNA in him, and Mama never knew for certain where we would be living from one year to the next, or from 1 month to the next. The house address was never constant. I can probably name at least 40 places I lived in my childhood. It might be another street, another town, another county, another state, or just another neighborhood. But wherever we moved, home was always the same address. And it was where Mom lived. I was never insecure. I always, while growing up, lived at the same home address. Maybe not the house address, but at the same home address. It was where Mom was. All that changed was the house address and location. We were and are a family. I'm addressing my siblings at the funeral too. We children were a constant worry because if trouble didn't come our way, we went looking for it. Mom never knew what we would do next. We burned the sofa down and carried it outside so the house wouldn't burn down. We burned the field down to put the fire out. We were constantly fighting. And there are many other things that worried and troubled my mom because of the disturbances, but I won't mention those. But one thing was always constant. Mom still loved us and was proud of us. She prayed for us constantly. Regardless of what we did bad, we were still her son and her daughter and grandchildren. We brought pain, embarrassment, shame, and pushed her to the edge. But Mom kept handy a little switch. And if it didn't do the job, she would say, just wait till your dad gets home. She was queen of the house. Mom had a variety of jobs other than homemaker. She was always busy, never lazy. She may be called upon to run the fruit stand for my dad, work in the garden, babysit the grandchildren. I don't recall Mom, while I was at home anyway, ever just sitting around. And we discussed this, our siblings did, or watching TV. Even though later in life she did like the Waltons and the Little House on the Prairie. Never some soap opera. But there was one constant. On Sunday, she and the family went to church. She would cook a big meal that afternoon, but right back to church she would go that evening. She was Sunday school teacher, church clerk. She sang and wrote songs. She quilted, sewed, and baked. You would find her on a Sunday in church. Her biggest job was trying to keep her children and later her grandchildren straight. And she was envied by many a lobster because she had a pincher that was honed to perfection. My mother didn't say much, but if you're in church and you're messing off, she just reached over. And you felt like hollering and she wouldn't say a word. My brothers and sisters, they understood this. So we knew not to embarrass or shame her in church or anywhere else. She was a person of few words, but you were welcome to her home, her food, and her residence. Always made folks welcome, never knowing who my daddy was going to bring home. Everywhere we moved, she would find the kitchen, her main quarters, and the sewing room. Wherever Mom moved to, she made sure she occupied these rooms, and they were hers. For Mom, there were many different ways to cook the same food. Potatoes could be fried, boiled, mashed, even made into potato cakes. Mom cooked or prepared what was available. We didn't always have much. Mom took what she had, though. You would even experiment, she would, with recipes such as jalapeno jelly, which I hated. Couldn't stand sweet, hot stuff. But her other jams were delicious. That just wasn't one of them. Mom always spread a table, and not just for family, but many times for others. She was constantly preparing for her hungry family, which took a lot of work. I never worried if I was going to starve to death. This concept of eating good food was passed down to the grandchildren. They loved her pancakes, her pies, her cobblers, cakes, and many other delicious treats. The sewing room hummed with the sound of a Singer sewing machine. Mom saw to it that all of us children had a quilt, and then started making them for the grandchildren. All of our children have quilts made by Mom. You may never know the pattern. That was up to her. But that didn't matter. It was something constant that she was also a grandmother, and a grandmother that was always giving and sacrificing. Later in life, Mom's health began to deteriorate, and she could not keep up the pace of constant giving and serving. But she didn't have to. My sister Janice stepped in and cared for her and for Dad and Mom until she passed away. And then for a long time, my other sister stepped in, Mary Lou. And she was living with her when she passed away. Mom must have wrestled with the thought and knowledge that she was losing her health and could no longer do the things she once did. Her life had now become uncertain and uncomfortable, even painful. But irregardless of what was happening, Mom knew, and she had a constant love that never failed. She had a constant faith in Jesus Christ that never failed. In order to get her to remember who I was at the last few months she lived, I would sing some of the songs with her that some she had written, and some was her favorite songs, and she would sing them with me. Mom must have felt these uncertainties of her life and the displacement. But no home had ever deteriorated for her. She must have felt like a castaway, and what will become of me? But she knew her children loved her. And that now was her constant. And I thank you for allowing me to share those thoughts with you today. Hopefully, I believe your mother relates to some of those, probably never lived